Ever since I got my hands on World of Warcraft in 2006, I've been a huge fan of MMOs. I've played a lot of them over the last 15 years. WildStar, Aeon, Terra, Star Wars The Old Republic, Elder Scrolls Online, Age of Conan, and many more. And while most of those games have definitely seen better days, I enjoyed my time in all of them. So when I heard Amazon was making an MMO, I just knew I had to give it a shot at some point. So I got my hands on the closed beta, and I have thoughts, and I figured I'd share them. I'm Senseless Guy, and these are my impressions of New World so far. New World is a gorgeous game. It isn't going to shatter any sort of artistic expectations, but it's more impressive than I would have expected for a game this size. For the most part, you have your standard areas, your forests, farmlands, swampland, and so forth. But peppered throughout the world, you'll find things that give it that extra bit of character, whether that be a shattered stone tower with its pieces being held together by a magical force, or an unsettling, otherworldly portal guarded by mysterious robed figures. There's just a lot to discover here, and wandering the world provides a real sense of adventure that I did appreciate while I played it. While I found the enemy variety to be a bit lacking in that adventure, especially in these early hours, all of the enemies on display look fantastic, whether you're fighting a wolf, maiming a weird tentacle, slamming into you, or slicing up a wild turkey for some meat. They're all highly detailed with small intricacies on display like tattered clothing or scars on their bodies from previous battles. You won't be blown away by anything on offer in this regard, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a fault with any of it either. But the thing that you won't find a fault with is that the towns in New World are amazing. Buildings are beautifully designed with believable, consistent architecture. Things are covered in vines. The roads are dirty and well worn. Everything is just a bit jam-packed, creating a sort of claustrophobic atmosphere, which is great because it feels like a real place. It feels like you're actually in this sort of fairy tale location that's out of a dream. The inn looks like an inn I want to stay at. These places are just simply cozy to be in, and they make me smile. I really do love the town designs in New World, and I wish more games had towns this fully realized, because I do think that there's something special. Where the visuals in New World start to falter a bit is with your character, unfortunately. Everything you do just seems to be a bit off to me. The running animation is awkward, the vaulting animation is clunky, the jumping just feels bizarre, and that's the thing about your character in New World. They're just weird to look at while you're controlling them. Nothing ever looks natural or in place when you do something. Even if it doesn't feel bad to do, it never quite looks right. Where the inconsistencies sort of stop is in the armor sets and the weapons that are on offer. None of them are crazy or earth-shattering. You've seen most of this stuff before, but that's a good thing. Sometimes tried and true works. And so, while I didn't find anything to be overly compelling, I certainly didn't find anything to be overly offensive or poorly made, which at the end of the day, in the early levels of an MMO, is pretty much all you can ask for. So, while it's a bummer that your character, front and center, is the most disappointing thing to look at in New World, the good news is that the game is really fun to play. The absolute best part of New World is experimenting with the various weapons in the game. Whether you're swinging a giant battle axe or shooting a musket, executing moves feels responsive and satisfying. The closest analog I could come up with when trying to effectively explain how the combat felt was Dark Souls, which is one of the best compliments I think any game could receive, because just like the Soul series, every weapon has its own unique identity when you wield it. It gives you a variety of ways to dispatch things. Every weapon has two unique skill trees, providing you with meaningful decisions when you level up, and leveling up works like an Elder Scrolls game, where you simply get better with a specific weapon as you use it. It's a well-executed system, and it feels rewarding, even if most of the skills are a bit uninspired. And while I certainly preferred some weapons over others, I spent a good amount of time dabbling in almost all of them, and came away more than impressed by the amount of options it has for various playstyles. What it comes down to is this. The way weapons feel to use in New World is by far my favorite aspect of the game, even with the caveat of your character looking kind of ridiculous while doing it all. There is a bleak reality check when it comes to combat in New World, though. The AI is just boring. Enemies have a handful of canned animations, many of them in a predictable pattern, which ends up resulting in you knowing the outcome far before it arrives. I was rarely thrown off by something an enemy type did after I fought 2 or 3 of them, which is a bummer because the interaction between you and the character models themselves is fantastic. Your weapon has to make actual physical contact in order to do damage. There's no auto-targeting here. It forces you to consider your positioning before executing a move, and lining up that perfect swing of a hammer, slamming your foe into the ground like a pancake is always satisfying every time you do it, but the enemies rarely do anything in return to make them feel equally compelling. There are moments that give me hope in this regard, though, such as the various named enemies scattered around the world that clearly have a more demanding set of animations for you to tackle, but they're just too few and far between. To continue the Dark Souls analogy, imagine if that game didn't have the crazy bosses to fight, and all that was left were the simple mobs everywhere else. And that's New World's AI in a nutshell, which it isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's just disappointing. Now, for the most part, I think New World's game systems work just fine. Leveling felt slower than a usual game of this ilk, and leveling your character is far less exciting than leveling those weapons I loved so much, but I think this is fine because too many systems for character progression can feel bloated. The actual quests themselves, however, range from being boring to abysmal. I cannot believe how many quests had me go to a location, find crates, go back to the quest giver, and get a little bit of experience. We're so far past these kinds of things in 2021, so it was disappointing to see this kind of quest philosophy plaguing the game from the very beginning. It's made so much worse by the fact that your character runs so damn slowly. Please, for the love of God, give me a sprint button. Please. One thing I won't be requesting from New World is a better UI, because it is a true strong point of the experience. Everything looks sharp, menus are responsive, well laid out, and clear to understand. I never had trouble finding what I went searching for. The character menu screen is easy to navigate and does a good job of giving you a quick glance at everything you need to see, allowing you to quickly switch out weapons or armor on the fly. The crafting seems simple and satisfying, and from my limited time with it, I think there's a lot of meat to chew on that bone, and everything else from the achievement screen to the map is just as functional and well designed. I do lament the absence of a mini-map, but it wasn't a deal breaker for me. I think it's time I bring up PvP and how my opinion ultimately is incomplete if you want impressions of every aspect of the game. I simply have no interest in PvP, so I avoided it completely. The good news is that the game let me do that. It never once bothered me to turn it on or flag myself for World PvP, and I really appreciated that about the game. However, the impact of the PvP that is going on is felt pretty much everywhere. The world is made up of various territories, and it has 3 factions, one of which you will choose to join pretty early on, a choice that isn't permanent but does seem to be pretty important, and you, along with the other 2 factions, are going to be vying for control in each of these territories. While I never cared to do any of this myself, I did love to see the results of that activity impacting the world around me, and when I stumbled upon a massive battle taking place right outside a village, I got a kick out of watching everyone blow each other up. If you love PvP, I imagine it's worth paying attention to when it releases, but I can't directly give it a recommendation because I'm simply not the target audience. But by far and large, the most disappointing aspect of New World is its character creator. Right in the middle of the opening sequence, it cuts to a scene with your character inside a ship and slowly reveals a randomly generated person the game made. Needless to say, the second time I went through this, it was entertaining, to say the least. But after this reveal, you're met with very few options, limiting the creativity for crafting a truly unique character. In my opinion, this is the number one thing they should address before launch. Character creators are so important to games, and this one just doesn't cut it. Once you get into the game world with that character, the story presented to them is serviceable, if not a bit trite. The main beats do a good job of getting you up to speed with the general idea of what's going on, but I never really found myself caring too much about what was happening. The voice acting is good for the most part, with some of it surprising me.
Tickla told me she sent you out to Shadowmine. You got her vengeance, did you? Indeed. I gave up then. If she's happy on her own, I'll let her be.
And some of it leaving little to no impact.
You! Come closer. Your captain needs you. There's something wrong. I'm not feeling right.
The world is corrupted, full of zombies and various flavors of assholes, and it's your job to go out and kill all of it. Pretty standard stuff. And honestly, that's a great summary of my time with the game. It's serviceable and standard, with moments that stand out and impress. It's a game of exhilarating highs and frustrating lows. It's a game with potential to be something really, really great, but only time will tell if that ends up being true, or if New World ends up in the pile of discarded, forgotten MMOs that has only gotten larger these last 15 years. I certainly hope it avoids that fate, because it's good for the industry if a game like this still works in 2021, and I think it can. Now here's hoping that it will.
The contents of this box are not of this world. They will guide you to that one, wherever and whatever that may be. Go then, Captain. Chart your course and your fate. I will say a prayer for the souls of your crew.
Holy shit, thanks for watching. This is my first video I've ever put on YouTube, and safe to say, I'm freaking out a little bit right now. So I'd love to hear your feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of or less of in the future. I definitely have a long way to go and a lot to learn, but I have more ideas, and I'd love to execute on them better every time I go through with something. So in the meantime, you can come find me as part of the Super OK crew at superokpodcast.com. We do a weekly podcast over there along with some written reviews, opinion pieces, and videos like this. All the links for that will be in the description below. And until next time, as we always say around here, I hope you have a super okay day.